Hello and welcome to George Past the Post, the place to be if you, like me, love elections and voting systems. This first video is going to look at the electoral systems being used in Canada and Australia because they're having elections very soon. Let's start with Canada. They use first past the post. But what is this? Well, Canada is divided up into 343 electoral districts or constituencies or ridings, whichever term you prefer, and each elects one member of parliament. But what happens? So, people vote for one candidate, putting a cross next to their preferred candidate, the votes are counted, and the candidate with the most votes wins. You just need more than any other candidate. You don't need an absolute majority, just more than anyone else. So if you have three candidates and one gets 35 and the other two get 25 and 20 each, yes, the person with 35 votes wins because they have more than anyone else. And that person becomes the MP. When you apply political parties to this and sort of a more national picture, you can get a political party winning a majority of seats in the parliament with a minority of the votes. Now in Canada, in more recent history, this is what happened in 2011 when the Conservatives won a majority with a minority of the votes. Then the Liberals did the same in 2015. But in the two more recent elections, the Liberals only won the most seats. But the general point is, I think, clear. First past the post is not a proportional system. And that's why, fun fact, in the constituency of Carleton in Canada, there will be 91 candidates. Yes, 91. Because a group called the Longest Ballot Committee, which is a protest group that want to abolish first past the post, have decided that one way to protest is to pick a constituency and flood it with candidates, which means they get in the news. And Carleton is also the seat of the Conservative Party leader in Canada. So God bless the voters of Carleton. But what about Australia? Well, they are electing 150 members of the House of Representatives. Now, like Canada, they are also divided up into individual districts. But instead of just voting for one candidate, they number the candidates in order of preference. In fact, in the Australian version, they have something called full preferential voting, which is, as it implies, means you have to number every candidate, or your vote may not count. So it's a good job Carleton isn't in Australia, because imagine having to number 1 all the way to 91. That would be fun, wouldn't it? So what happens with preferential voting? Well, the votes are counted. The first preference votes are counted, I should say. If somebody has more than 50% plus 1, they win. If not, the candidate that comes last is eliminated, well, in terms of the election, and their votes are looked at and their votes are reallocated based on who they put as their second choice. This process continues until somebody gets a majority. But in Australia, it's even more fun, because even if somebody has 50% plus 1, they still go through this process, so you can sort of see what may have happened until there are only 2 candidates left. Now, because it's full preferential voting, it means that every vote that's in the count continues to the very end. That means there are no so-called exhausted votes, although you're probably getting a little exhausted of me. But I've never let that put me off before, and I'm not going to now. That's how the House of Representatives works. So, like first past the post, you're only electing one candidate in each seat. So again, a party can win a majority of the seats with a minority of the first preference votes, or even, they have something called the two-party vote, which I won't get into because, believe it or not, I don't want this video to last forever, although I'm doing quite well. We are already longer than a Eurovision Song Contest, which is 3 minutes. Anyway, on to the Australian Senate. Now here I will simplify slightly. Voters, and I envy them, and by the way, voting in Australia is compulsory, so you have to do this. The ballot paper is horizontal. From left to right, there are a list of political parties or political groups. There's then a black line that goes all the way across. And then below the line, there are the list of all the individual candidates in each group or political party. I know. And what voters have to do, in short, is they can either vote for 1 to 6 parties above the line, or at least 1 to 12 candidates below the line. I know, it's a little confusing. But in terms of how the votes are counted, it's a bit like the full preferential voting, except you're electing 6 candidates in the States and 2 in the ACT and Northern Territory. So each candidate has a quota that they have to get in order to be elected, which is very interesting. Basically, the overall outcome is proportional. As proportional as you can get when you're electing 6 people. But anyway, so that means that the Senate is proportional, which means it's harder for whoever's in government in the lower house to get things done. That is how those 3 or 2, depending on how you want to play it, systems work. And we'll see what happens when people go and vote. So, hope you enjoyed this video. We've done over 6 minutes, so that's 2 Eurovision Song Contest songs. Hope you have a good day, and see you next time. Goodbye.